This is Normal Night on BBC Two. No, it's not. It's Weird Night. Or is it?
This is Weird Night.
You're watching BBC Two.
God, look, that's so weird. Weird, that is. Genuinely weird. Have you seen this? Weird. Very, very weird. Look at it.
Weird Night continues. In 40 minutes, Martin the Vampire starts our all-night session of the weirdest movies ever made. But first, weird thoughts. What is weird, what is normal, and what lies beyond human sense? Reasonable people discuss the boundaries of reason.
How weird was it for you? Good evening. What are we doing this Saturday night, watching all this weird stuff? Weird enough to be in Blackpool on such a cold, out-of-season, post-illumination Saturday evening. Weirder still to think that we're about to enter Ripley's Believe It or Not auditorium, therein to discuss the true nature and deeper realities of weird. The roots of our fascination with the weird we're going to explore with a bunch of not so weird people in the bowels of the auditorium. But first, I'm joined by the founder of 40 and Times, Bob Rickard. We're having a wander around the auditorium. Oh, look at that calf. That's horrid. What is that, a genetic mutation or something?
Well, these are bizarre.
The myth is that the waters are so cold in Canada, or is it that they have fur-coated fish?
And apparently some Scottish museum refused to believe that it
The
wasn't.
National Museum of Scotland took it seriously. We love you people up there. Good luck. Enjoy tonight's programme. But this one did exist. The human unicorn?
Almost certainly.
Explain the lighthouse man to me. Good heavens.
Well, this is a freak of a different sort. Had a hole cut in his head. She put a lighted candle.
Oh, Bob, my favourite. Isn't this? This is a painting on
toast. Well, Ripley had one of the world's greatest private collections of anthropological artifacts.
Oh, I appreciate it here, particularly the penis sheath. This guy is the amazing Orshante. Now, he told me to stand on him, but I'm not going to, because he's self-hypnotizing, he's out of it. I'm not going to stand.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, God, you're just great. Be very careful, please, okay? Go on you get. Oh, my God. The nails, come on. Off you get. Right, we're out of here. Let's just wake him up now. See what? Up, Orshante? Yeah, sitting up. Okay. Well done, Orshante. Fine. No holes.
Look, nothing.
No, look at that. Good, they're sharp. Let's leave before the sword thing. I want to be out of here. The amazing Orshante. It's a dirty job, but someone has to do it. Can I introduce you to the other guests we have tonight to discuss the weird? Going round from the left, Dave Punter. Dave is a professor of literature, English literature, Dave, is that fair enough to say?
That is true.
Specialising in the literature of terror.
Yes.
Thank you for coming here tonight. Terrified sitting next to you, James Randi, professional charlatan, former carnival act, debunker, mystic, etc.
All of those things.
All of those things. You met Bob here, Bob in his green shirt. We enjoyed that walk around the museum, didn't we?
Yes.
Now, Lynn Picknett. I'm working very hard on this. She's actually Britain's only paranormal agony aunt.
That's me.
Is that nice to be a paranormal agony aunt?
Especially the only one.
Right. Sitting behind you, snuggling with the robot, is Mary Beard. And Mary is a classicist.
That's right.
From Cambridge.
From Cambridge.
Finally, Jenny Randall, who is one of the leading experts in Britain on UFOs, time travel, and the rest.
Absolutely, yes.
Weird night. Ladies and gentlemen, weird night. Are things getting weirder in the mid-90s? Just
I think
the
they've
same?
always been weird, but perhaps in a different way. Perhaps technology has brought weirdness to a new height. Perhaps it's just changed the character of it. But if you go back into history, you find that there have always been things that are considered weird if you have, as a definition of weird, something which appears not to have a ready explanation, something that appears to be out of joint with nature.
Oh, that's quite a good... Actually, for definitions, has anyone gone along with that definition, Lynn?
How about other? Just other.
Other.
Yeah. It's not original, it's Ken Campbell's.
It's Ken Campbell,
Yeah.
the theatrical impresario and actor. Get off my microphone, pussycat. Hold on a second.
Weird started off as a noun, but it just meant fate, destiny, what one was headed for.
That's what I
so
thought.
it became the whole kind of store of things in the future. So it had to do with precognition and knowing about the future when you didn't want to, and that kind
That's
of
like Macbeth, the weird sisters,
That's what
because
made
they
the great
foretell the
change.
fate.
That's what made the great change, yes. Though nobody knows whether Shakespeare meant weird or wayward. His spelling was so bad we never able to tell. If he did mean weird, he was the first one to make it an adjective, actually, for what it's worth.
All right.
And we've gone on from there. And the weirds, of course, are also the fates.
Okay.
But that's why Lynn's better, isn't it? That's why Lynn's other is a better word, because if you go back to my time, go back to the Greeks, and then something that happened on the other side of the Atlantic was always the other. Something that happened on the other side of the Aegean Ocean was the other, and so the other can be much more expandable and contractible.
I mean, in a way, that's what we watched tonight, wandering around here, Bob and I before. It's things from other places at that point when people weren't travelling there on cheap charter flights.
It's kind of the exotic experience, isn't it? I mean, it's the exotic to one, whichever point of view you start from.
And that can be whether you've gone there,
Yes.
charter flight,
Yes.
or whether it's in your head
Yes.
in the
Yes.
sitting room.
I think there's something reactionary too. It's a challenge against authority. People don't like to believe that the scientists of the world can explain everything, so they challenge it by things that happen to them and say, aha, this one will fool you.
Well, they're right too, aren't they? I mean, it's not that
This man, though, now, we're going to have this later, but he's going to start now, isn't he? Because you think that science is right, and that Jenny... No, go on.
No, the definition of science as a group of people who think they know everything is a popular misconception. Science, of all things, knows that it doesn't know. Perhaps like Socrates. Science is the study of the world around us to the best of our knowledge.
The establishment, James, the scientific establishment rubbishes everything that it doesn't quite... everything outside itself.
Including other science.
That is what
Including
scientists
other
believe
sciences.
about themselves.
Yeah.
That is what scientists believe about themselves. But I think the popular conception of scientists is something
True.
quite else.
True. And I think the popular conception is wrong.
No, wait a minute. What's the popular conception then, Bob?
Well, I think you have it actually portrayed in almost all the popular cultural avenues. The mad scientist. I think the average person feels that the world is actually out of control. It's not better for science. Science hasn't made our lives, I mean, medically perhaps, but we still have wars, we still have famines, we still have conflict, we still have dissatisfaction, hunger, and so on. And I think that there is a bit of PR for science that goes around, that science will actually solve all mankind's problems. And it hasn't quite worked out like that. And there is this feeling, I think, of alienation from the ordinary person's point of view between them and science.
And is that why things, to a degree, are getting weirder? 40 Times used to sell 3,000, now sells 30. I mean...
Well, we actually
we
get
have a
news
paranormal
clippings.
agony aunt.
we get news clippings and all sorts of news feeds from all over the world every month. We have thousands upon thousands of news clippings coming in. There is no sign of that abating. These are all reports of various degrees of credibility. And there is no doubt in my mind that I think people, there is an increasing belief amongst ordinary people which is equivalent to the belief in the supernatural in medieval times. There is an abdication of belief in science, and now I think people are almost ready to believe anything.
And it seems to me that the scientists and the supernaturalists, share a similar approach. I mean, things that we can't explain happen all the time. I believe that.
In principle,
but
yeah.
everybody is trying to explain them. Maybe the work of the imagination is to say that things that we can't explain happen all the time.
I think we've been poisoned by our psyches, by our collective unconscious, by our dreams, because we've moved so far away from being able to deal in myths and symbols like the ancients, and who were used to the idea of gods and so on. I'm used to the idea of dreams and interpreting dreams. Now we don't bother with any of that. We can't interpret our dreams. Our dreams are out there poisoning us. And I actually think that they're taking...
Well, they're poisoning us. You're not saying they're a bad thing. You're saying they're a good thing that we no longer deal with.
Yes, but just like adrenaline is a good thing if you use it to stand and fight or run away, if you don't do either of those two things, it actually poisons the system and gives you killer stress. I think that because we don't deal with our myths and our symbols anymore, they're actually creating things like the alien abduction scenarios and, you know, becoming menacing and out there.
But David's point is that science is another myth and symbol, isn't it?
Certainly.
You know, when we say E equals MC squared, 99.9% of the population, including me, hasn't actually got the foggiest clue what that means, apart from somehow in inverted commas as a mechanism of truth. So it's not in some way that science, rationality, and symbolic mythology are opposed. They're just different versions of different ways of...
There's a differentiation here between science and technology that I think is very much confused in the public eye. Technology is the application of what science can discover. And science is only something which says, to the best of our knowledge at this moment, this is what we believe to be true, subject to correction upon the presentation of better evidence. Meanwhile, technology takes that and they make the atom bombs, they make the flamethrowers and such, and science is only discovering truths. It doesn't make these things.
Yeah, well, science is acting a bit like mysticism now, because it's discovering things that we as human beings have long recognized, that reality is a fluid process. It's an interaction between our experiences and the tales that we tell. And the paranormal emerges out of that.
That's science, because
you see, science, because it has to work on things that it can define in a laboratory and reproduce, cannot really explore.
James, let Jenny finish, please. Go on, let finish.
It cannot cope with the supernatural because it doesn't play by the same rules, and it struggled to entertain that. And I think gradually we're beginning to see science understanding that it's a whole new ballgame when you come to the paranormal, and they're understanding now what we've seen for a long time.
Can I have another question, which is, I posited at the beginning the idea of, is it getting weirder? And none of you answered it because you're a wild bunch and you've all gone off down other avenues. You're saying there's a disappointment to a degree with science. Are we agreed that there is something of that in the world? Is there a post-religion thing going on here?
I think one side of things is getting weirder in one definition of that, in that I think that the dark imagination, the imagination that lies behind the endless texts about child abuse and serial killers and so forth is getting more and more of a grip. I wouldn't think about that as weird, but there is a real question about how one could explain the psychopathology of things like that without invoking concepts rather like the weird. I'd think more about the uncanny and so forth, because we're dealing here in areas where there is no reliable science, where there is no reliable memory even. We're not even clear as to who remembers what in these kind of areas, whether that is a true memory or a reconstruction in the present. We're here into very, very strange areas. In a way, to call them weird seems to be a problem, because the word weird seems to me in a way too flippant to describe them, but we're certainly into areas which are well beyond most of the explanations we've been dealing with so far in the West.
I mean, the word weird isn't, you're the literature of terror expert here, Dave, but we're not talking about terror or horror. When we talk about the weird, I think just in the room next door there, that strange toast painting, it's kind of weird. There is a light element to weird as well as a heavy element to weird, isn't there?
In archaic societies, they actually had the mechanisms for coping with anybody who had a weird experience.
Yeah, that was my point.
As we've come into the modern era, we seem to have lost our way a bit.
And it's sad that, as David was saying about the dark imagination, it's sad that the archetypes we kind of invoke now are in fact, or rather evoke, are in fact the dark ones. We don't have the sort of cuddly mother images coming at us. We have these really grim ones that are actually coming from our own psyche and being projected onto something totally false. Strange syndromes are coming at us now from our own psyches.
Mary,
I think you're all being kind of hopelessly unhistorical.
Do you hear that? Hopelessly unhistorical.
I hear it. Right, a whole lot of you. All right,
Mary, the floor is yours.
The nice cuddly image of, once upon a time in the past we were all somehow kind of
psychically
connected. Well, actually, no one's been psychically connected for as long as history has been around. There are people in Greece, in Rome, in David's period, throughout, where the dark, the unexplained, the whole business of what culture didn't want to take on board has been as nastily treated or as dismissed, whatever, as we currently do with the paranormal.
Yeah, but what happens was you go to a culture like the Aborigines where they have shaman, medicine men, and they have what we would call mediums, but the difference is they revere them, they respect the comments that they make, they act upon them, whereas we are frightened by them.
We like to think that because we want to have them as our
But you think we're romantic?
No, I think I've spent some time with the Aborigines and I've seen the way that they do behave.
But their
and they do
experiences,
treat them with respect.
Their experiences have are socially useful.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
the role of the shaman.
Because they've learned to do things which we've forgotten, which if we could learn again to understand and accept, and not be frightened
That's
of.
where I differ with you.
But what
Mary, I'm going to let James, please differ with Jenny.
Well, there's where I differ. You see, you assume that the shamans actually do something constructive. I agree that they do something constructive sociologically and philosophically, perhaps, and certainly psychologically. They do something constructive. But do their visions really work? Do their telepathic powers, their magical pulling of the thorns and whatnot, do they actually work? If you look into it, you find out they're no better than chance alone.
Well, this comes down to whether you accept that any kind of visionary experience can ever be real.
No,
I accept
that's
that
a
it does.
generalization.
No, I accept that it is possible because I've had experiences myself. I've talked to so many people who have had experiences which check out. I accept that sometimes they don't, and you have this value judgment you always have to make. And a shaman is going to be wrong possibly as often as they're right. But it's a way that you treat the material. The fact that you can accept it's possible rather than just simply do what I'm afraid most materialistic people do and reject it as impossible, probably because of the way they've been brought up.
Well,
we have to change this cultural image.
Some people may reject it on those
But the
grounds.
thing is
I don't.
the point is that the world is getting weirder in the sense that people are becoming more open to all sorts of experiences. And because we have no mechanism to deal with it anymore, we've become, quotes, too sophisticated. People are believing in quite astonishing things. I mean, I should know, people write to me. But they also can't deal with, quite basic things like their own dreams. And I think this is actually terribly important. People are going from being quite sceptical to being completely credulous overnight and passing by all the valuable things in their own psyches on the way. And this is terrible. We have to actually stand back and look at ourselves and reevaluate ourselves.
And I'm afraid this has got a lot to do with James's countrymen, because the American influence in the paranormal is so devastating that it's actually, and the media are responsible too, because they portray it as if that is representative of what's happening in the world. But nothing beyond America is important, and therefore it influences everybody else.
I always thought a film like Ghostbusters, say, was the epitome of that, because it actually presented a technological solution to something which was intangible, that you could actually create machines which can actually nail the ghosts, or capture them or see them or whatever.
That's very interesting, because one of the terms here, I think, is concretization. When you're thinking about particular psychosis, for example, you're thinking about the problem with some psychotic people, that they believe that things which have imaginative reality actually come to have material reality. That's a real problem. But when you think about Ghostbusters, you wonder, where is the psychotic there? Is it the belief in ghosts, or is it more to the point the belief in a technology that can eradicate ghosts? That seems much more psychotic to me. The notion you actually construct a machine that can wipe out unreal entities seems to me completely mad. To believe in ghosts seems a minor peccadillo. By the way, I don't believe in belief. I think we're talking about the imagination. I think we're talking about belief.
But isn't that why James is dangerous? Or isn't that?
I don't know. Is he dangerous? I haven't noticed yet.
Maybe he's dangerous.
He's sitting on a giant
He's pretty dangerous. And also, actually, I don't see why he's disagreeing with Jenny and Co. Because actually, I think he's in the same game, really. Because I think that the one thing that the paranormal needs for us to kind of give it a go is someone like James sitting there all the time operating as a skeptic. I mean, Jenny and James are not divided. They're actually two sides of the same coin.
The sad thing is the skeptics, they're wonderful at actually coming in after the real researchers have done all the hard work and claiming that they solved the mystery that the real researchers actually did.
They make what it is. Every fanciful story.
Look at crop circles. They did it with crop circles.
Yeah, what the fanciful story needs is somebody saying it's a load of bunkum, or it's all done by trick.
James, her criticism, I want to go back to the original criticism. By being an employable skeptic of the weird, you actually validate the weird. Without you moaning and saying this isn't real, there's no fun somehow.
No, it's not a case of that, really, Tony. I think that the misconception is, first of all, that I'm a debunker. I have never been a debunker, and I've always denied the title. I'm an investigator. If it turns out to be something that can be debunked, then away we go. But if I started out with the attitude of this is something that's not so, and I'm going to show it to not be so, that would be a different attitude.
Okay.
I mean, I'm the debunker here because I'm generally known as a believer, if you like, broadly, in the paranormal. But I'm at long last debunking something I've researched, which is the Turin Shroud, which I started off hoping, you know, it would be a nice paranormal image or something, and it turns out not to be. Now, I'm honest about it. It's a fake, you know, and that's very sad for a lot of people. I'm the real debunker.
It's
here.
a brilliant fake.
But why is it sad?
You're
for
almost
some
more
people?
interested in the fake.
What makes it sad?
Because, all right, that's the great question. We want there to be weirdness and wonderfulness in our world, don't we?
At the expense of truth?
Yes. What's truth? What's truth? Do we ever know the truth?
Truth is weird.
No. But we can approach it, and we can approach it very closely.
You're talking
if
about
we try hard.
scientific truth.
No, I'm talking about truth. No. Not at all.
For
There's no
example-
such thing as scientific truth, first of all.
No, but for example, ordinary kinds
That's
of
an
truth that we
oxymoron.
think of are bounded by time, yes? I mean, they say that there are rigid divisions between past, present and future. Well, the unconscious knows no time. And so issues about precognition and so forth can be considered very, very differently if you take a depth view psychologically. I'm not sure that's being taken account of. Now, whether one says that the future can actually be imagined is, of course, a difficult point. You could argue, well, the future hasn't happened yet. You could also say there's nothing new under the sun. What are the bits and pieces that comprise the future? It's not clear.
Truth is such a crude instrument. If you're going to do any analysis of it, I mean, I suppose I'm the reverse of Lynn. I'm kind of someone who doesn't believe a word of this, but thinks it's dead interesting. And James seems to me like
with you all the way, Mary.
Like the kind of guy who's going to come along and do an analysis of Father Christmas and is going to convince us that Father Christmas does not exist.
Oh, no.
You're not going to say that on television before children are watching. That is nasty.
You see what I mean, James? I mean, you see that, you know, in showing something to be falsifiable, you haven't shown it to be uninteresting.
Oh, no, not at all. I've never said it's not interesting. I'm totally fascinated with everything that's weird. I don't care what it is. And if we don't look into it and take it seriously as a phenomenon, then we're missing the boat.
All right, give us an explanation. Give us one thing that you've investigated that you haven't found an answer to.
I haven't gotten anything so far. If I come upon something...
Well, I think
wait a minute.
that demonstrates exactly what we're saying.
Demonstrates what?
I think it demonstrates that you are always going to find an answer because you're so determined that there's going to be one.
I'm looking
Or it demonstrates that science does have an answer to most things.
Well, I don't think so. I think that the problem is that with people who research the paranormal, you will find that most of them disbelieve as much as they actually believe, because there's a difference between having an open mind and having a disbelieving mind.
And having a hole in the head, that's a different thing.
Well,
Can I ask
But
about...
sitting on the outside of this circle, this looks just like two mythic systems having a bit of a clash, you know, and I don't buy either mythic system, but I think it's interesting to
I
watch.
certainly don't have a mythic system I would define it.
How do you feel about being a mythic system having a clash, Dave? Is that kind of...
I think I've got one in front of me as well, I can see. But let's try something else. I mean, the weird experience have to do with fears, yes? And
to do with
fears.
Fear.
With fears.
Okay.
All of them, I think, at one level or another. And we're confronted there with a real problem because in one way, then those fears change historically, and so we get different accounts of weird experiences. In another way, they don't shift so much. So that on the shifting side, you get different embodiments of phantoms, ghosts, spirits, and so forth. You get different social phenomena, serial killers now, as it might be something different in the Middle Ages. I'm sure Mary can fill me in on this much better than I can manage myself back in Greek times. But you have enduring things as well, perhaps. I mean, so you have these two kinds of strands of fears going on, and I'm sure that an enormous number of weird experiences are ways, not perhaps of directly representing those fears, but ways of negotiating those fears, ways of handling them, of dealing with them in ways that can partly come out into the outer world, partly stay within, partly negotiate that problematic boundary between outer and inner, which is what the imagination is there for.
And that's why they need to be contested.
It's a way of handling them.
There are no answers.
Yeah.
It's a negotiation.
We
negotiate the inner world and the outer world, and one of the ways we do it is an apprehension of weird experiences. No answers.
Would you agree
no questions?
That most of the weird things may result from a fear of death? I mean, death, you know, gone.
I'm not sure that our fears are as simple as that, and I'm not sure I would quite agree with that.
Even beyond death, let's look at this thing in front of us, Damien 1 and Damien 2, as I've called him. Together with the word weird tonight, obviously throughout this evening, it's freak shows, the freaks,
But it's also the unexpected, and I think probably this is, yes, the shock of the unexpected, which is probably the most disturbing thing for modern man. My friend Michel Merger, who wrote a book, Lake Monster Traditions, actually showed that the vast majority of stories that originate about monsters in lakes begin with rather vague experiences of some raw process in nature, being out on a still lake at a time which is just fills one with fear. You know, the water starts bubbling, or there's an oddly shaped log, or the wind blows the waves into a certain shape. But that's one thing. It's almost unknowable. We can never really know what the origin of a sighting is. The second part of the problem is the way the story then propagates in society through people who report it, twist it, add their own imagination to it.
The really weird is things that our imaginations have worked on as well. It's an imaginative construct.
But our imaginations work on everything we perceive.
I mean,
totally.
What Bob's been saying is it adds up, as far as I can see, to it is a problem being a human being, right?
We teach our children not to expect the unexpected, to accept that everything that we know about the world follows a linear progression and can be easily resolved. And then when something like this does come, that's why we treat it in the way that we do, because
it may well be
we've
that
been
many
indoctrinated into a wrong way of thinking.
It may well be that many events that we call synchronous, for example, you think of somebody and then the phone rings. It may happen all the time, but there are certain times when we know it, when we recognise that moment that it's happened, and then it becomes meaningful. And that's another layer in the process when we add meaningfulness to things.
Going back to monsters, I mean, there are no monsters until you show them to somebody. Etymology. Sorry, I know, academic. Monster, monstro, I show, demonstrate. The monster becomes a monster when you show it to somebody. This, in the wild, is not a monster. It's a monster when it becomes an object for somebody else's gaze.
Oh, come on, that's a monster. A two-headed calf in the wild is surely a monster.
Who knows what the boundaries are around species permission?
It's a monster when you put it in a museum.
It's not clear.
All right.
But actually, right at the beginning of the Royal Society, even Newton had to bring to every meeting some wonder that had happened within his sphere of interest and correspondence, and they would bring along notes of somebody who'd survived having a kidney stone operation without anaesthetic, of course, in those days, or a two-headed. What's it?
The point was made in the freak show video earlier on this evening, wasn't it? I mean, the boundaries around what is a permissible birth are growing narrower and narrower and narrower. That's a very interesting point.
Can I ask then, is the weird an entertainment form which Newton brings along with him, we bring along here, or is it something that should actually be important to us and of some value?
Well, it's a confrontation with another level of reality, isn't it? It's a very minor thing. I mean, that, although it's quotes, a freak of nature, is a very minor thing in our experience. But nevertheless, it's there, it's confronting us. We are put in our place to a certain extent. We have a little frisson of terror about our place in the world. Actually, on the freak show video, it was very interesting to me, the reactions of people. It's almost like, not perhaps just because there were film cameras there, but they were kind of making these rather offensive comments at the freaks, in this kind of, we ought to make some kind of offensive comment, I suppose, this kind of attitude. And it was nerves. And they'd made themselves confront these people.
Well, why can't it be both entertainment and illuminating? I mean, politics is the same thing. Politics is entertainment.
There's the real freak show.
In the history of science, most of the dynamic processes are about normalizing science. Science has always been about repeatability and replication and so on. It's the anomalies which lead to the next leap, the paradigm shift.
That's right.
And the next leap of the what? Listen,
the paradigm shift.
Stay with me here. I'm just a journalist.
Like the shift from Newtonian ideas about the universe to Einsteinian. It's a whole new way of looking.
Scientific progress, which we feel a bit shifty about.
Which suddenly puts a whole lot of the problems the previous paradigm couldn't explain into a new focus.
The anomaly we can manage. The problem is with uncanny repetition. Coincidence, precognition, something coming round again in a different form.
It's only coincidence. Only coincidence.
Yes, well, indeed, Bob was on. When are the moods, individually or socio-culturally, when we apprehend coincidence as the main structure we should be attending to? We call that magic, I think, probably, don't we? In the main. And I believe that magic, lies deep inside us.
Have we lost the magic, or are we coming back to it?
No, we haven't lost the magic. No.
We've lost the ability to think magically in a
We've lost the will to negotiate with the magic.
Yeah, okay, in a controlled way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
the reason I'm mentioning time is I'm bringing it on to the other point before we end here. The time is moving on towards the year 2000. We're talking millennial, aren't we? And there's meant to be weird things, weird spiritual movements at each of these points. Now, can my historians help me here?
They're already happening. You know, in the year 1000, Voltaire, at least, and Gibbons both said, and they may be inventions, because we don't have much more proof than what they said about it, that in France they didn't plant any crops because it was the end of the world, 1,000 years, the millennium and such, and the people went hungry the next year. Just to prove that I'm a human being, and many people say, oh no, he can't possibly be a real person. Yes. I have to tell you briefly about a remarkable coincidence that happened to me. A gentleman called me not more than 3 weeks ago. I'd appeared on some television program in the United States, and he just wanted to make general conversation for a few minutes. At the end of the conversation, he said, oh, by the way, I picked up for $1 at a sale in a bookstore here a book that I may send you if you're interested. I said, what's the name of it? He said, Cavalcade of the Supernatural. I lit up on my end of the phone, and I said, a pale blue cover on it? Yes, yes. Do you know the book? I said, yes. A copy was stolen from me many years ago, over 20 years ago, in New York. And he said, I'll be glad to send this to you. There's no name in it.
Tell me.
He put it in the mail, and
it wasn't the same copy.
It was a
$20
copy. And he charged you $500.
There were my notes on the inside. It was the same original copy. Now,
it's a miracle.
my answer to that is, people say, how do you explain that? I say, if coincidences like that didn't happen, now that would be remarkable.
And I take up on something that David said, because I think we're kind of, this freak show has been a bit sort of, you know, it's drawn us down the wrong path. And he said a bit ago, he said, the anomaly doesn't bother us, you know, what, and then he went on to do his coincidence bit. And I think that it's dead easy for us to sit here and say, the anomaly doesn't bother us, because we're not actually the fat man in the freak show, or the lady with no legs. And I think there's a way in which we all looked at that programme thinking that, okay, you know, freaks, how nice, you know, here we got freaks, you know, not being hidden away, but actually exposing themselves, getting a lot of money for it, great. And, you know, this is, you know, undermining a bit of the PC stuff. And we could only do that because we're actually sitting here, you know, being, for all the world, you know, quite normal ourselves. And I think that, you know, to look at a freak, you know, it's fine. To be a freak is not so fine. I think you were. No, I think that's appalling. Dangerously.
I take your point, but I think. But I
dangerously.
Think
I want to know dangerously what?
Yes, dangerously what?
Normative. How about that?
Dangerously normative.
Yes.
Or to mislead. But I do think. I also found that feature utterly shocking, and I was amazed to find that kind of thing is still going on. But I think that the force of what I was trying to say is that the interest that we have, the fascination that we have, and fascination is double-edged with freaks of that kind, is not only about the anomalous, but about the repetition, about the distorted repetition. That what comes round once as a human body that is normative, we understand, comes round again in giant form or dwarf form or deformed form. That's all I meant. But I think that our voyeurism on those kinds of is a shocking.
And the film, you know, played up to that.
But
it's lingering shots on the limbs.
I mean, that's the point.
We were on the line.
Exactly. But also, so why attack it? Because of the people who were in it, they were actually getting a good deal out of this.
Not very good.
Well, I've worked with freaks in a carnival many years ago when I was 17, 18 years of age. And I can tell you one thing. You develop, when you work with them, side by side with them, you develop an enormous amount of respect for them because you realize here's someone with a defect, if you can put it that way, that I have not suffered and that most people never will suffer or can't anticipate. And look what they are doing with their lives. Yeah. They are learning to sing and play the piano and whatever, aside from going out and exhibiting themselves.
But it comes back again, the freak is a symbol for the unknown or even the unknowable. That's the threatening aspect of it. But I think in every age there have been people whose job it is to actually watch for freaks and for anomalies and things like that, because they were regarded as perturbations of the natural order, which, let's say in the Chinese system, meant that there was something wrong with the way the country was being governed or the way the gods regarded the country. And so it was people's duty to actually watch these things and regard them as ominous.
They were very prophetic in nature.
Is there something wrong now? I mean, are there more UFOs around? Yes. Is there more of this?
Yes.
There is?
Yes.
There are more UFOs around?
Well, absolutely.
How do you know?
Mary wants to know, how do you know?
There are more reports of That's the difference.
I'll agree with that, yes.
And that's largely to do with the fact that, you know, we're becoming more conditioned to be able to talk about them. People now are not as afraid as they were of the peer pressure of talking about something strange, anything strange. So it manifests in what we like to call these things becoming more and more common. And the media, again, are responsible for this, because it's the way that we represent anything weird to the public at large that affects the way that they respond to it.
So what are we doing wrong? The media, we're in trouble. What are we doing?
We trivialise this whole thing. We sensationalise it and trivialise it. And that is not any...
In just 2 minutes, tell me what is the important thing about weird then? That we shouldn't think that tonight's BBC extravaganza has been just fun and titillation and a few two-headed calves. What's the important thing then?
The
what
imagination.
should it be leading us to?
The problematic development of the imagination. If it is the case that there are more reports of UFOs, for example, around at the moment, then my own understanding of that would be that there is a more vivid stock of images around which we cannot house within our common repertoire of experience.
That's what
that
I
to me
meant.
is on the whole a good thing, but it is the counter side to the efflorescence of the dark imagination. I do think, I mean, contrary to what was being said earlier, I think both things can go hand in hand, and I do think that the notion of salvation from the outside, which is the way in which I think UFO culturally has turned, as it were, certainly in the films and so forth, notion of coming to rescue us, this is really a sign both of danger and fear, but also some kind of hope. But these are all imaginative products. These are all bred from...
But there's a new field nowadays which goes beyond imagination and talks about the imaginal realm. Dr. Kenneth Ring, who's a psychologist at the University of Connecticut, is one of the leaders of this. And what he's saying is that we should learn to use the things that we've treated as imaginary, therefore not to be considered as important, in a way which we accept as still not as real, but therefore still useful.
As real as real.
I think that's a good approach.
But I don't think that most of that kind of highfalutin talk is all very well, but I don't think it kind of gets much further than saying, you know, it's a problem being a human being, and it's even more of a problem wondering what it means to be a human being. You can talk about the problems of the imagination.
You're more of a damn skeptic than
It's about being
Randy over here.
alive. That's, you know, that's what. You know, being alive in this world is what's difficult.
But in this affluence of the weird, then, is it doing it? Is it? What's it saying to you? Absolutely nothing.
Of course, it's saying nothing to me. I mean, the fact that I don't believe a word of it doesn't mean that I'm not thinking with and about it and through it all the time, in wondering, you know, whether there's anything out there, whether there's anything after death, you know, whether, you know, what it is to think about something as normal or not. You know, that's the stock in trade of, you know, being human, isn't it?
Does it matter anyway? Because the outcome of these abductions and near-death experiences are positive changes in society. These people are coming out with positive ecological messages, which might actually do more than all the preaching by politicians. So in effect, whether or not there are really any aliens there might be a secondary issue if it actually has a good effect on life.
If someone says, you know, I am not the slightest bit interested in whether there are any other living forms of life in space, I think they're either stupid or lying.
Yes.
You have to be. You know, you have to be interested in that question.
You're on James' side here. James you're feeding him all the good lines here. I mean,
well, I feel it's getting now to be politically incorrect, to be the least bit skeptical, and skepticism is really a very healthy point of view. We wouldn't have elected Nixon in the United States if we'd had a little more of that point of view, and we'd saved ourselves an awful lot of trouble. I wasn't voting then, by the way. I'm not guilty.
We're not blaming. What's the weirdest thing anyone's seen in the last few months? Let's just end this now. A bit of weirdness. Jenny, the weirdest thing for you recently?
I think that the way in which I'm getting many, many calls from people who are now not going to psychiatrists anymore. They're actually going to researchers of strange things and believing that they can solve all their problems. I think that's worrying.
Psychiatrists are weird. Let's admit that. True. Fine. Dave, something weird. Anything weird from in your world?
Oh, I don't know. I've had one or two experiences which I found genuinely weird over the years, but what I found really weird about this, not only that I can't explain them, and that's pretty weird, but also that they're actually in a way too banal to recount. I don't get flying saucers coming at me with I just get little light.
Tell me, sir, very briefly, something weird. Anything weird?
Yes, I was in Budapest, Hungary not long ago, and I saw two magnetic ladies that were highly touted in the press, and they came to demonstrate for me, and one of them took a plane of glass like this and stuck it on her forehead and said, "There, how do you explain that?" I said, "Wash your face." She said, "I can't do that because I would short circuit the whole thing."
That's weird, ladies and gentlemen.
That's weird.
Thank you all, David, James, Bob, Lynn, Mary and Jenny. It's been weird. From the auditorium, a very good night. Enjoy the rest of the evening. A very good night.
Each little bud
This is Weird Night.